in that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. And it shall be as when the harvestman gathereth the corn, and reapeth the ears with his arm. And it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Raphaim. Yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it, as the shaking of an olive tree. 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uppermost bough, 4 or 5 in the outmost fruitful branches thereof.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study today in Proverbs chapter 27. We're going to pick up at verse 14. He that blesseth his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him. A continual dropping in a very rainy day, and a contentious woman are like. Whosoever hideth her hideth the wind, and the ointment of his right hand, which bewrayeth itself. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof, so he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. As in water, face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. As the fining pot for silver, and the furnace for gold, so is a man to his praise. Though thou shouldest bray a fool in a mortar among wheat with a pestle, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. For riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? The hay appeareth, and the tender grass showeth itself, and herbs of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of the field. And thou shalt have goat's milk enough for thy food of thy household, and for the maintenance of thy maidens. That one throws me off there, because I'm always like, he that blesses his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it shall be accounted a curse to him. You know, of course, this brings to mind the time in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, when Paul and Barnabas, was it? Probably, yeah. They were traveling, and this woman came along, and she began to cry out with a loud voice and say just that. Well, not just that. She would say, "These are the servants of the Most High God, who show unto us the way of salvation." And she did this with a loud voice continually. And they didn't like it. It brings that to mind. But this seems like almost like a little bit of a different thing. And the thought occurred to me, of course, that, if someone early in the morning rises up early in the morning and they bless their friend, have a great day, because that's a form of blessing. God bless you. Hey, everybody, let's wish John a great day. Have a great day, John. And then he goes out and has a flat tire. It's gonna be sound, and it's almost like it's a superstition. It will be counted a curse to him, just because that's human nature. When you loud voice, right? Bless your friend to God. You know what I mean? This is a let your light so shine before men. This is a, do not sound a trumpet before you. It is good to bless men. It is good. Like it says, with the same lips we bless God and curse men. We should not do this. And we ought to say blessing. We ought to bless and curse not. That is a good thing. But you're blessing your friend. Everybody blesses their friends. Everybody prays for their kids and their friends and their mom and their dad. It's bless them that curse you. But you get up early in the morning to bless your friend. Good for you. Good for you. That's a good thing. We all do that. But the point is, there's a bit of showmanship here, a bit of tooting your own horn that's going on, and that's why you're not blessing your friend, you're cursing him. You're not doing him any favors. Because, something bad is bound to happen. That's the way life goes. If not today, then tomorrow. You're going to die someday, and something's going to, you bless your friend, then he dies. What your blessing does for people. And not that you shouldn't bless and pray for people. It's like sometimes we pray and, hey, people do die. But sometimes it's the time. Jesus prayed and he died. So, don't be afraid to bless people, but don't be a big shot about it. Don't be making a loud voice or I get up and, hey, everybody, I'm blessing people. That's what it's about. Same thing with that woman that annoyed Paul. It'll be counted a curse. You're not cursing them, but you're doing something that's not it's not a righteous thing to do that. You're just being like the scribes and Pharisees, they like to go be seen of men to do things because that's what they care about religion. That's one thing I don't like about Jordan Peterson because he wants to believe God is real. He sort of does. I get it. A lot of people want to believe God is real, but they haven't encountered him. So how can they know he's real? I get it. I'd be probably trying to seem smart among men just like him if God hadn't revealed himself to me. That's absolutely, I'm almost certain I'd fall down that path because I almost lost my faith when I was, about 30. I didn't almost lose it, but I was just at the super low ebb. I mean, you could say, I had very little faith left. I've told that story before. If you don't know about it, it's why I still believe in God. We'll tell you about that. There's a video on this channel. I thought it was it's probably, I don't know what under playlist it is, but whatever. I'll mention it tomorrow or something after I check it out if I remember. Anyways, so a continual dropping on a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. A constant annoyance. Whoso hideth her hideth the wind, in the ointment of his right hand, which bewrayeth itself. And at first I was like, what is this talking about? No, it's so very obvious to me then. Hideth her. What does that mean? Here's the thing. I have a lot of things. I live in a property. My house was built in 1866. I was born in 1973. So the house was already 100 years old when I was born. And I came here when I was about 20-something, 29, 8, something like that. Well, yeah, the year 2001. Do the math. And a lot of things have gone wrong. And I didn't come here knowing anything about owning a house. So the sink in the bathroom has a dripping in there. In the drain, and I know how to fix it. I've just been fixing other things that were higher priority. I got a frozen drain right now. I have one open. The other one's still frozen. We'll get it today. But you can't, here's a continual dropping in a very rainy day and a contentious woman. What about the continual dropping? Well, you shouldn't ignore it. And you can't just let it keep going on. Because a continual dripping is bad news, man, for your structure. I know that. You can't have when it rains out and you got continual dripping, you got to do something about it. And that's what a contentious woman is. She wants a fight. I'm like, I always contended I told my wife from the beginning, if you want to fight, I'm going to beat you. Not physically. I'm going to beat you in the fight. I'm not going to back down. That's not how it works. If you fight me, you're going to lose because I can't be cowed before you. And so you can't dominate me. You won't. I'm your man. You chose me. If you can dominate me, then why the hell did you marry me? Why would a woman marry a man she can dominate? No woman, unless she's kind of weird, right? Unless she's kind of weird. Most girls don't like that. They want some slinky, slanky worm of a man that they can just dominate and, hey, let me boss you around. Like that classic henpecked. Is that an image of marital bliss? Like the henpecked, and she's like, I've seen some situations where I've seen plenty of situations where I felt sorry for guys because they had not dealt with their contentious woman. Love your wife. I love mine. And the way I love her in part is by not putting up with her being all contentious. If a woman's contentious, she's not happy and you won't be happy. If you hide her, that means you ignore that. You're hiding the wind. He that soweth to the wind, what's he going to reap? The whirlwind. You hide the wind. What do you think's going to happen? The whirlwind's going to break through. That's what's going to happen. The ointment of your right hand. Your wife ought to be ointment of your right hand, or the ointment of thy right hand, because she's betraying. It's like your right hand is betraying you. That's what I think. We're going to look deeper into this That's my initial impression. Now let's go look at some other, let's look at some sources on that, all right? Let's look at some of the language here. Continual dropping on a very rainy day. I don't think I need to explain. I'm sorry I didn't bring you along. For those of you actually watching, try to always describe what we're talking about, right? We're into the Bible Hub. And we have here, whosoever hideth her. I'm not interested in the first part. I know, the brawling, contentious, but we don't need to look at all those words. Hideth her. It means to hide or treasure up. Both the word hide is the same words. I have no issue with that. Like hide or treasure up. That's what I'm saying. It's like the implication is you treasure that up. Like I said, it keeps dropping. You ignore that. I'm just giving you the proper. I think that's a very clear interpretation of that. It's just like treasuring up the wind. Well, I like that. He that ignores her treasures up the wind. Whatever. Like you treasure up the wind. What happens when you get more and more wind going? You create a whirlwind, of course. If you create a reservoir of wind or whatever, I get it. You're adding to wind. And the ointment of his right hand which betrayeth itself. Bewray. Well, okay. Well, ointment. Shemen, fat or oil. Right hand is the right hand. Okay, we don't need to worry about that. So the oil of his right hand, yamem, shemem, fat or oil. Okay, pretty good. So the oil or ointment of his right hand. Okay, that's clear. To call or proclaim, read. Let's look at the NIV. Let's see what those interpreters have to say, because I don't despise them. I don't always agree with them. Some people get really mad that other translations exist beyond the King James, but I consider it a bonanza. I love peeking at them and comparing them. I own probably about, several dozen translations. Not several, a couple, more than a dozen. More than 20, right? Yeah. Or versions of the Bible. Some of them might be duplicate translations. And I don't mean, like, I got a lot of King Jameses laying around. I'm not counting all that. There's easily 100 Bibles about the property. That's what they'll be taking that in evidence, in the future, right? He had at least 100 Bibles on his possession, on his property. These books of hatred. Restraining her is like restraining the wind or grasping oil with the hand. Well, that's not the way I look at it. It's like, okay. I guess that's the loser's way of looking at it. Like, I can't do it. Okay, well then, you know what? Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes what woman is so contentious, right? Hey, look the attitude I took there, it's like I said about the guy getting beat up by his wife. I don't like it hearing the people in the area were mocking at the guy. That to me is like not cool. It's like, that's a tough situation because you don't know how intent they can be on violence. How much can you do to defend yourself without potentially getting in trouble, especially when they could be trying to bait you into violence. So, there's definitely, we are not under bondage in such circumstances. If someone is so ungodly and unbelieving and so quarrelsome and violent, you don't have to stay there. That's like they're saying there's no love. She's not doing the wifely duty. She's not being what a wife, she's now banging her husband. Now you got to assert yourself if you have, and it's like, hey, sometimes you get so far down the rabbit hole, and if you come to the truth late in the situation, it's hard to correct course sometimes when things have gone so wrong. That's why I advise my kids, get it right from the beginning. Better not to be married than to marry a really awful person. And there's plenty of awful people you could marry. That's why I told my kids, there's plenty of awful, I dated girls, it would have been a huge mistake to marry. I'm glad I didn't. I wish I hadn't even dated. Could have skipped out on that. If I had actually, nobody could have told me because I didn't know. Nobody knew what I knew, apparently, or nobody around me knew what I know. That's why it's imperative. That's why I like to share it, because I feel like, That's how you remedy the past in some respect. You got to, like when I left the Shepherd's Chapel, I felt that it was an obligation of mine to make up. I had taught people serpent seed doctrine. That's why I made the website. It wasn't like to make money or all this other crud. Is that I always spend more on my website. I spend more on this than I've ever received from people outside my family, I'll say. Family members have definitely contributed more than I've received. But other than that, no. Anyway, so I like my interpretation, but I get it, what they're saying here. Grasping oil with hand. Grasping. And what was that word meaning? Let's look at that. To calling the oil with the calling ointment with the hand, the ointment of the, what did the King James say? I want to go back there because maybe they were better after all. Right? We come full circle. Which bewrayeth itself. I see. You know what I gotta do? At this point, I gotta look up bewrayeth because I think it means betray. Right? I think it means betray. But why is there no tray? Why is it ray? And it was just like froward years ago. I thought it was like forward, and I was just like, okay, it's a forward, man. It's just an old way of spelling it. No, froward is like to and fro. It's an actual archaic word we don't use, and so you didn't learn it in school. Nothing to be embarrassed about. I didn't learn it in school. I learned it from being the King James and being like looking it up in an exhaustive dictionary that has things like one of those really thick ones. We used to have to go to the library. Actually, we have two really thick ones at home because I like those. What are they called? Whatever. They're exhaustive. Not like it's exhaustive concordance is what I'm thinking of, but when they're unabridged dictionary. Unabridged. A lot of dictionaries are abridged, which means they take out a lot of uncommon words. So let's see what bewrayeth mean. I'm going to look this up here and then let's see. Webster's 1828 dictionary. Bewray. Oh, see, that's awesome. We're going to go there. That's a perfect thing. Webster's 1828. Bewray, verb transitive, to disclose perfidiously. So it is sort of like betray, but it's a very specific kind of betray. To show or make visible. To proclaim, to make visible, to expose. In that sense, yeah, of being like to call, proclaim, or read. Like to open up like the book, like the opening of a book, like the unrolling of a scroll. Like calling people to prayer, calling people to notice something. A lot of times it's like she complains about her husband. Maybe that's it, the oil that but I don't understand how that, exposing, whatever. We're going to move on. I think I gave one, I think that you could definitely go with the King James reading and just be like, hey, there's a lot that could be said about people who are contentious, men and women. It says about men, no striker. Obviously, a man is called to love his wife, and he should be a man. Also, as a Christian, we all ought to be gentle and meek, which means self-controlled. I mean, you're not likely. You don't. I mean, I think. There's a certain amount of self-defense that is appropriate. Defense. I always love the way that word is bandied about today. When it's like that doesn't look much like self-defense to me. Like. I understand that, like, if someone broke into my house and I took a bat and I hit him in the knees and then disabled him and no further harm came to him, right? He'd probably sue me, right? I don't know, but whatever. If maybe that's not such a good idea, but that's what I'm saying. Like that, maybe that's too much force. I mean, depending if it's an unarmed person, Well, But I don't know. You gotta be. I do believe there's some amount of self-defense, depending on the level of violence that's coming at you. If someone's coming in with deadly intent, you certainly are able to disable them. Does it give you the right to kill them? I would say that not. If, let's say, I hit him in the knees and disabled him, and he's at my mercy, and I could kill him. You know what I mean? But he's completely at my. He had a gun. I took it from him, and I kneecapped him with my baseball bat. And, it's not my gun, it's his gun. He's dead to right. I'll just call the cops and he's done, man. He's going away for a long time. Do I have to, but what if would I be tempted to take his gun and put a bullet in his head? Maybe I would be, but I shouldn't. That's something I shouldn't. I've won. I don't need him to, I'd rather have him a chance to repent. Yeah, really. It's like that's what Jesus would have us do. Especially if he puts him into my hand for mercy. You think I'm going to be like, kill, It depends on the heat, though. I tell you what. I pray the Lord will never suffer me to be tempted beyond I'm able to bear on that account. I don't want to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? But there are certain levels of violence. If people did them to my family, it would be very difficult to restrain oneself. Oh, my goodness. I like the King James rendering of the next verse. The NIV is still up on my screen on the left side, and I'm just going to ignore it. It just says, they change it, and I know it's right. I know it's right to translate countenance person, because it means that. It's the same meaning. Like when it says respecters of persons, the idea of countenance means like the face, the person, their face. And in fact, I like that actually to a certain degree, like to think of the idea of person in terms of countenance. Let's just look at that word in Hebrew for the sake of understanding here. Like I was going to say for fun, but for me, understanding is fun. I do enjoy studying these things because God's word and the truth of it is something worth searching out. And why is my thing... No, it's not wrapping proper. Oh, there we go. I have to make enough room for the ad or something, or whatever that thing is on the side. Or just enough to keep it out. Or whatever. We're on verse 16, right? Iron sharpeneth iron, so that's a very famous thing people say, as iron sharpens iron. Yeah. Everybody loves that analogy. Panim or pana, face or faces, I guess. And you see the wide variety. Wow. Oh, it can mean above in the sense of face, like facing, like when you have the idea of a personal partiality. Wow, look at all those translating in the NASB. This word gets used a lot. How many times is this word used? Yeah, 2,128 times. That means it's gonna have a wide variety of metaphorical uses, right? The face of a seraphim, face of animals, face, surface of the ground. Adverb of location, adverb temporal, like formerly. Noun masculine, edge, face, faces. Yeah, it means the face. I just like the idea that the fact that they translate that person, it made me think about the Trinity in terms of there are these different faces of God that you're presented with. And it's a face, and not just a face, but a face in that a face is the representation of a particular person. You know what I mean? I mean, Christ is the express image of his person. The exact, as it's an icon. Engraving, like a die that's stamped of the Father. The express image of his person. Anyways, but yes, that's why we cannot exist entirely by ourselves. That's why you cannot, Christians, part of being a Christian is contact with other people. Even if you're like me, a natural introvert and more interested in doing things and creating things than actually interacting with people, it can be a bit like of a trial because we are not all given to that so much. But we all need it, that's for sure. Whether we know it or not, we need other people. I certainly do, And so when my wife is a very important part of me. She's the most critical tool to sharpen me and me her. And it's good if you can find someone to marry who's like that. And I find that interesting that this comes right after that. That's what I'm saying. Well, if you get offended when I say I'm not going to let my wife argue with me and win and fight with me. Like I said, you entreat me. We take counsel together. I don't want contention. I don't get a lot of contention. Early on, a couple of times, because I'd make her, it usually came when I had sinned, okay? So that my sin would lead to her sin. She wouldn't deny that, and I don't mean it as any slam against her. It's really hard not to sin when someone sins against us, And so we can become contentious in that regard because we feel hurt. It also can be confusing because your world seems different when someone close to you seems to have betrayed you in some way, Anyways, iron sharpens iron. If her the thing is, she learned to deal with my sin without sinning. And that certainly helped me. But it wasn't that her response to me was less harsh in its way. Because she would use her feminine love and charm instead of harshness and masculine and or anything. She wouldn't use anything that felt like fight. And that was more wounding to me than anything that could be done by, let's fight. Because it just elicits a certain response in a man. Or not, or if he doesn't, obviously he doesn't want to fight with his wife, No, I certainly don't. I always felt sorry. And actually, like I said, I don't want to get into details, but I usually, in some way, provoke things. I wouldn't say always, but, for most of the time, I'm provoked sometimes, but it's by little things. That's why one of my, faults is I find often details provocative. It's part of my gift. It's what makes me a detail-oriented person. It makes me have a lot of things to say about a few things. But it's also, there's a challenge to that. Because, there's a lot of details in around the house, and a lot of details, things that could be better and right and this, and I could start nitpicking on everyone else. I consciously avoid doing that, but I feel tempted to it, and I resist. Because I know at times I realize the ridiculousness of it all. Sometimes it gets to be a bit much. It almost feels like I was going to say that first verse. I thought it was almost related to sufficient to the day is the evil thereof. When someone blesses you in the morning, something bad can happen. I was taking more of a. It surprised me when because I saw that verse beforehand. I was thinking about it. It surprised me when I began teaching it that I took such a. Actually much harder line on it. But actually I think it was a much clearer distinction between blessing, righteously, as Christ would have us, and not. So I'm just thinking about what I was saying to Katie about it, and I guess because I talked to her, I actually formed a clear idea of what I thought about it. And so I came blowing out the gate. And that's the way it is with a lot of things. I discuss a lot of things that I believe in with her. And with others. If you don't express what you think about Christ to some way, it's hard to get sharper about it. And, and we can be, again, it's not so much about expressing it all the time. And if you have a gift in expression, then it may be. How do I explain this to people? Because people need to have but if you understand it and can do it, that's beautiful. That's more, if you're obedient to it. I look to my kids. I don't expect any of my kids. I never laid on them anything. You should be preachers. You should preach. Try to make them try to do what I've done. Not that we all can preach the gospel. We all in every way and small. But not everyone has to do write scripture music and do what I do. I wouldn't want to lay that on them as a burden either. Not that I've done greatly, but I think they'll do their own great things and whatever that is in the Lord. And also the fact that I'm just pleased. And like I said, I would be tempted to pride at what fine people they are and how wisely they comport themselves as they go forth as adults in the world. Like I said, I have that. I've been waiting for this all my life. I've been working toward this. So I say, people say stuff to me about, it's like, don't talk down to me, boy. I get to say that now, especially to boys. But not most of the one, advisedly. I don't, I'm just saying. A kid not too long ago called me an old man, which tickled me pink, actually, As anyone who knows me will understand. I've been aiming for 70 my whole life, you know. I'm just rocking it up. All right. All right, so we are back down to here. Now, iron sharpens iron. It is so true. Get a sharp person around you. So, you know, if you are really dedicated to the Lord, it helps to have someone really dedicated. And if your husband or wife is not it's not likely, you can find a very good Christian person who's just not as gifted and going to be in that same zeal cave that you are. You know, I mean, writing things or doing like, you know, my wife also does Bible songs and stuff, which I intend to publish. and things like that, you know, to a lesser degree, to her own, well, not to a lesser, but to another degree. Whatever. I don't want to say anything. But, you know, if you don't have someone who is quite as zealous as you, because that was very important to me, like I said, when I was looking for a wife, I knew what I wanted. I wanted a woman who was as zealous for Christ as I was, as zealous, especially for the Word of God as I was. It's not just Jesus. For me, it was explicitly the Bible I was interested in and zealous after, because that was to me the key to understanding. You know, I knew, you know, I knew there was something wrong with, I don't know, nothing wrong necessarily. My calling was not to go to church or go to Bible school. It was to be thrown in at the deep end with the old man who was trying to drown me. So I started with Arnold Murray. He's a sharp man in his way, right? Cunning old geezer, right? And so, you know, I even think that, you know, your enemy, certainly your, you know, difficult people and even enemies can sharpen you also. You know, I, like when I went on my website to contend with people over the doctrines, the false doctrines of Arnold Murray, you know, I think as, you know, there were some pretty intelligent people who contended with me, and that definitely sharpened me. I became sharper for it. You know, I always like to come out on top. And it's really hard to contend with me. As anyone who knew back then did, you know, unless you, I mean, it would, you know, they would just descend into insults, and that's so easy to beat. It's just like, you know, that's just verbal judo. But still, you know, it's something to be practiced. We need to learn to handle the sword, right? But not to use it willy-nilly. You know, like, it's got to be we want to, you know, faithful are the wounds of a friend. I like to, you know, I don't really, I think of my enemies in terms of principalities and powers, not in the terms of individuals. So I said, towards individuals, I want to give mercy. Towards the principalities and powers, I want to give nothing but death. You know, and that doesn't mean it means bring down the evil things and structures and the things that are in the world that create a lot of the human suffering and evil we observe. And that will perpetuate that. Like the military-industrial complex. Whatever spirit is creating that, there's just the wheels of war just churn on. And is there anyone just with his finger on the button saying, oh, there's no mastermind. It's a spirit that controls all these people that work together to, like, you know, well, we want money and, like, we build bombs and, well, we need to sell them and whatever. You know, it's all working together. It's the complex is observing those interactions of human beings. That's like there's all these sinful motivations at play. You know, no one person has to feel responsible for the murder of thousands of people. It's grotesque. Anyways, let's go on to the next thing. Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof. You know, I have a fig tree sitting out in my studio, which makes me feel kind of cool. Just whatever. Just because it's there. He that keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof. I'm trying to keep that fig tree. So I eat the fruit thereof. So he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. Oh, Lord willing, right? Of course the Lord is willing. You wait on your master. You know, Jesus even said so. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. You got to wait on your master. You got to be up waiting for him, you know, anticipating him. You know, and, you know, that's why we reform ourselves. That's why we straighten ourselves out. The Lord is coming. I'm not getting kicked out. Well, maybe, you know, there's the thing. Whenever you see the poor parables of Jesus, you know, I'll tell you, be secure in your salvation, right? But if you're listening to me, I presume you're not doing so cynically. I mean, you might be. That'd be funny. But not as a Christian cynically. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, yeah, right. I'm just going to sin up to the last minute and then repent, Paul. I'm going to demonstrate. Like, I'm not going to be baptized. I'm just going to believe in the story of Jesus Christ, that he rose from the dead. I just think that's true. But I don't have to do anything subsequent to that confession and belief. I'm just going to stay put right there. And I'm not going to do one thing to change my life, which is, you know, sinful. I'm going to keep doing all the sins I've been doing. You know, it's like, and I'm not going to be going to church or fellowshipping with anybody or getting baptized or taking communion or, you know, participating or praying or any of that stuff. I'm just going to believe. Okay. See how that goes for you. That's like the guy with one talent. That's like the guy who wandered into the wedding not having a wedding garment on. You're being disrespectful to God, and he's not a fool. And if you play him for a fool, oh, God have mercy. What a fool you are. What a fool you are. You know? You think God's a fool. You think God is mocked. I mean, if God exists, he's certainly not mocked. As far as, look at what he the evil he allows us to do is a foreshadowing of the power he intends to share with us. And his divine, you know, partaking of the divine nature. This is this is what I'm baited with. That by these exceeding great and precious promises, you may be partakers of the divine nature. And from 2 Peter. And what does it say there? Right? Great and precious promises. Actually, it's 2 Peter 1? No. It's 1 Peter. Right? I don't remember where my own verse is. Well, I can't remember. I forgot actually where that is. Oh, that's got to be 2 Peter. No, wait. I get the wrong. The precious promises. Whatever. All right, here we go. Oh, great. That's not the right keyboard. Oh, we're just sailing through this now. Divine. Now that, yeah, it's just grinding to a halt. We've ground to a halt, folks. It's a flat tire. Oh, here we go. 2 Peter 1:4. It's early in 2 Peter. That's what's throwing me off. Yeah, one of my favorite things. Whereby are given to us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these you may be partaker of the divine nature. I was trying to bring it up at the same time as reading. I'm just going to read it. Having escaped the corruption that is in this world through lust. You know? How have we done that? It's through the blood of Jesus. We've escaped it in that we've escaped the punishment due from that corruption. But also, the promise is that we will, through resurrection, be in a body that is not subject to the corruption that is in the world through lust, like the lust of the flesh. You know, that is because we believe in the resurrection of Jesus. We are also raised from the dead with him already in promise. I mean, because it's a hyperbole of how true God's promise is. We're overstating it in the presence because we have not yet obtained the purchased possession, but it is already purchased. We've got the receipts, you know? So that's why we believe it, because we know it's true. You know, God has testified. You know, I know it's especially true because when I called on him, he gave me his power. So I know, you know, a lot of people don't believe, but I do. Whatever. You don't know. No, I get it. You know, some people don't believe any kind of evidence. I'm not like that. I can't, like I said, if Jesus came down from the sky, what's his face? Dawkins says, if God appeared before me, I'd think I was hallucinating. And he would just never accept it because he's a priori, meaning prior to any consideration of evidence, he's decided there is no God. I hadn't done that, but I'm at this point, post whatever, I've got my mind made up. And that's it. And that's why I wait on my master. I want the honor thereof. I seek glory in immortality. How about you? You want glory in immortality? Well, keep the fig tree. Let me hear you now. A parable of the fig tree. What did Jesus... This is actually the closest thing I've ever come to the parable of the fig tree in the Old Testament. This is probably the only verse I would ever... This is probably the verse Jesus actually meant. I should have known what have made me feel like this deep in my heart feeling when I was reading it, a little bit ago. Because it's like, it's what we're doing. He came, he looked at the fig tree to see if there was any fruit. And he cursed it. As he went into the temple and he saw the money changers. And it's about those that keep, the house of God. Those that preach the word of God will be judged first. Judgment begins at the house of God. And that's what that fig tree is about. Keeping that royal / divine thing. Because it's both royal and divine, I think, in the fig. It's the sweetness of the vine and the oil together. The fatness. It's like the fatness of the oil and the sweetness of the vine and the fig. But that parable of the fig tree where he was saying, he cursed it. Learn when the branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So you got to keep that fig tree. I'm going to be learning about it. I'm hoping it's going to survive the winter this time. I had two. One, they both died, but I took a cutting from one and I transplanted it into a pot, which I did not leave out this time. I left them out in the cold and they died. They were called Chicago figs. But I don't think they can quite take our weather. Not out here anyway. Maybe in the city where it's a bit warmer maybe or something. As in water, face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. The first part of this, I know there's one coming up that I think is even harder. Man, we've already been through 45 minutes. I feel like I've been doing this for 15. As in water, face answereth to face. Heart of man to man. Well, the heart of man, let's see what this word answereth. Because I think that's the key here, right? Because it's what is the heart of man doing to man? And we'll look at the NIV, of course, because I remember I used to be pretty much a stickler of giving my own thing first out of just my empty head. I don't care if we go there first. It doesn't matter. As water answereth is not even there. Is water face to face. The word answereth would be, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring you along for the ride. Here we are on the Bible Hub. So we have this word, the word, you see how it's in brackets? That means that it was a word supplied by the translators. In your King James translation, a normal one, it would be in italics. And if you read in the introduction, assuming your version has an introduction, it would explain that those are words supplied for clarity and they're to let you know that that's part of interpretation and definitely not part of the translation. But, and they were pretty good about that. Like a lot of these verbs. Anyways, but it's not critical. But oftentimes they're absolutely right. So answereth does not have a strong feeling here. It's like as face to face. So the heart of man to heart. As water face to face. So we were just talking about how water has this. But no, the word face has this. And I believe that's the same word. Hold on a second here. Or actually, whatever. I'm just going to check if it's the same word. Okay, water. Face is same word. Panim. Same word. So, let's look at that NIV. Let's take a look at that. as far as that water part, what are they going to say about that? Is wave after wave, or something about waves of the sea or something like that? Nah. Face. Because there must be some sort of, it said like in many different contexts that word face can almost be like a verb. I wonder if that, but see, I don't know what it's going to be. Hold on a second. NIV. Oh, I like what they did with it. I think that's what they mean. I think this is what it meant, and I couldn't quite see it. This is an excellent interpretation. As water faces the face, that that would actually work as a translation for me. Let's say can I read the King James like that? Yeah, as in water face answereth the face. I'm just blind. That's just all it is. That's a very fine translation of that. It's just so archaic that it makes it difficult for me. Right? Face answereth to face. Well, what do you look when you look in the... I was thinking of the water hitting itself. Instead, I get it. A man's face, he can behold the face in the water, and it's reflected back at him. Paul talked about it was James actually. As a man being a forgetful hearer, as a man beholding his face in a glass and going away and forgetting what manner of man he was. So the heart of man is a reflection of the man. The water reveals the man. And so I don't know if that means the heart of man. So the water reflects the face of the man. So the heart reflects the man to the man. Yeah, I guess it's saying looking into your heart is like looking into the water. And there is that, like, do people explore their conscience? What do I really think about this? And I would say that it requires looking into the heart. The heart is deceitful above all things. Who can know it? You know what I mean? But it is where we can know more about ourselves, what we really think. And also, like I said, I've discovered things about myself over time. And one of the things, like I said, with the war in Israel right now, or the war in Gaza, whatever you want to say, the war in the Middle East, Palestine, whatever the Romans called it, that's what my ancestors, the gift we left to everyone. The Lord, the Lord was in it, no doubt. Jesus prophesied the temple would be destroyed. And it was. But as we look into our hearts, to me it's a deep thing because, like, for years, I just sort of blindly accept, because I had come out of Arnold Murray and the Shepherd's Chapel and all the serpent seed doctrine. Even though as anyone who knew me back then can attest, we certainly, me and my friends and I were not like radical anti-Semites by any means. We always thought of it as like, well, some of the Jews are the seed of the serpent, and not all of them. I mean, God, no. That's what we would say. But, it took me a while to realize, but that's not what Arnold Murray believed. I have him on tape, his own words. He says, New York City, people were saying, there 6 million Jews in New York City? And he said, more like 6 million Kenites. Okay? He thought 6 million Jews, about 100% Kenite. That's why he looked at it, because the real Israelites in his mind were the English. And they were one tribe, and then the Germans, that was the true Judah, according to Arnold Murray. And that's what he believed. And as I discovered these were the teachings of the church I was in, I rejected them. Well, because I just thought they didn't fit. Now, I was saying that. Okay, but after I got out of that, and I started writing about my objections to the teachings on my website, oraclesofgod.org, right? I was approached by this guy who was a Palestinian Zionist who was very supportive of Israel, and he told me this like litany of facts about the 1948 war and 1967, and he told me all these things, and he gave me this thing, which I was like, I just accepted. And probably maybe because he was praising me or whatever, he was of course coming to me because I was coming out and defending Jewish people, as I always have, as being indeed the Jewish people. Like, you shouldn't take that from them. Like, denying their actual heritage, even if they're like been adopted into the family part of them, like the Khazars or whatever. A Jew is not which one is outwardly; it's which is inwardly. Paul said that, and I think of that the same way as far as the Jews. The state of Israel is a little bit of a different thing, but I was given this propaganda which I never questioned. At the time, it was just after. It was the years after the. It was like 2005 or 6, right, when this was going on. So that was that time. And then and I never really thought much about it, like the Middle East and Israel and stuff like all that stuff was before my time. I was only just a young man at the time, just learning about the world. I was going through my 30s, but I never really questioned the narrative that I was given. I also, knew that there were some bad things about, that part of the world in the state of Israel. So I never advised unquestioning support for anything. The nations of the earth are a drop in the bucket. We serve the living God. That's our kingdom. And I am secondarily, God, family, and country. I want to assure that my country lives in peace. And it is not hurting other people in other countries. Just because we have rights here doesn't mean we should trample on other people's rights all over the world. And that was something that was hard for me to see because I didn't want to believe it was true. I didn't want to let that light shine down into my heart even. Necessarily. Not consciously. It was only after, like I said, October 7th, when I started listening to the Israelis and listening to I was listening almost exclusively to Jewish people talk. Almost exclusively to Jewish people talk about this. And on one side, I just see all this violent, hateful rhetoric that is way over the top. On the other side, I see people saying a very different kind of story about what's been going on. Well, and it unraveled all the propaganda. I realize it's much more complicated. There's no angels on the other side. There are angels about the place probably, but not necessarily good ones. Whenever you see all that kind of evil and butchery going on, it's like that. There's nothing good in that. Hell and destruction are never full. That destruction is critical. We're going to look at that. Because I believe that is related to Abaddon. I'm guessing. Let's see. Yeah, but I didn't want to believe. I hadn't wanted to. On October 7th, I was really moved by that. I felt all the people being kidnapped, all the children. There were 37 children killed. I looked at the official totals. There were not 40 beheaded babies. There was actually 0 beheaded babies. This is Hamas, not ISIS. They don't do the beheading. They're different. Whatever. I saw a lot of charred corpses. Looked like the work of Hellfire missiles, to tell you the truth. Anyways, I have no doubt a lot of evil was done on that day by a lot of people. People getting a chance to get out of, there's criminal elements within Palestine probably breaking out, no doubt. People are opportunistic and do evil. But I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to see the full story, or like I had never, it's not that I didn't want to. It was much more easy to just stay where I was. I wanted to just stay with the beliefs I had. I didn't want to upgrade them on that account because it's so far away. It's something I don't really think about. And then, under the last president, there was some peace in the Middle East and everything was quiet. And that seemed like a good thing. But there's a lot of people suffering that's being ignored. And that shouldn't be ignored. The suffering of people should not be ignored, especially when you hear their cry. We heard that in the Proverbs. When you do that, you don't fear the Lord. We fear the Lord. That's why we hear their cry. It's like the suffering of those who have not, it's like nobody's totally innocent. But, I mean, come on. Yeah, but that doesn't give you leave just to crush people. You just can't do that. Israel. This is not what God made you to be. The rabbis have a more truth. Some of these rabbis for the ultra-Orthodox, they're like, God spread us all into the world so that we would bring the message of God's love. And they were almost like, all they need is Jesus. I swear, they're like 99% there. And even then, it's like, if you go with that, I tell you what, even those who know not God, doing the things of God, I hate to insult them like that. They definitely know God in a certain sense, even though they know not his true name. In fact, they don't even like to say the name of God. They say Hashem. They don't even say the name because they don't know the name. Yeah, they know the name, but they don't know the name. That's almost like there's something about that, the fact that they can't say a name. But we have the power of a name. Because for us, it's the name of Jesus Christ. Or Yeshua, if you're Jewish or a Hebrew roots fanatic, I don't mean to be fanatic. You can love the name of Yeshua. Some people insist on it. That's why I got away from it, because I didn't want to be associated with that. I don't like to be associated with whatever. I want to welcome people by the gospel. I want to preach to them in a way that's understandable. I remember when I used to have the Yahweh stuff in their Yahweh stuff, people would be like, oh, why was it? They thought it was just Jehovah's Witnesses. It's like, people are too easily confused. I'm confusing enough. Hell and destruction are never full. What is destruction? Hell. Well, hell's going to be Sheol, I assume. And I like that there's two of them, right? What verse is that? There it is. I'm sorry. Bring that there. Abaddon. Let's look at it. Hey, right? Whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. So my Revelation chapter 9, you can get it on my website, oraclesofgod.org. It's not available on the streaming sites because Because I got a new version I wanted to finish. And the old one's going to sit on my website. A lot of other stuff. All right. Place of destruction or ruin. Abaddon. Not used a ton. 5 times in the Old Testament. Job mentions it. Right? Naked before him and destruction has no covering. I like that. Like you take the cover off destruction. There you have the lake of fire. Consumes to Abaddon. Consumeth to destruction. Abaddon and death say. Destruction and death. Yeah. Psalm 88, that was another one. Oops. This is not the way to go. That's not the way to go to Psalm 88. Not through Bible Hub. When you click on it there, it always brings you to the in-depth, broken down, each word with the Hebrew and all that. I don't want to go that detailed. This is not a university class. And I couldn't teach it, too. I want to be like a man who boasts secretly, making suggestive comments. All right. What verse is it? It was verse 11. Wilt thou show wonders to the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise thee? Question. I remember this one. Shalt thy loving kindness be declared in the grave, or thy faithfulness in destruction? So it's equated to the grave. But I like I said, to me, I take it as like, I think there's something, death and hell. There is the idea of death and second death in the Bible. The book of Revelation makes that clear. And first resurrection and second resurrection. Though second resurrection, like the Trinity, is a word not in the Bible, there is a second resurrection. Just like there is a Trinity. It's just our word for it. It's only made up part of the it's the only part of the doctrine that's made up. That's the one thing about the Trinity that's actually pretty good. Is the only part of the doctrine that's made up is the label. And everything else that counts for the scripture is pretty good. It's something I didn't want to believe either. I liked being a rebellious anti-Trinitarian, but you know what? It's just a traditional doctrine that happens to be right on the nose. I mean, even though, like I said, it's still inadequate because we don't know God. We can't adequately describe him. A Trinity is what God is, how he's revealed himself, I should say, is a better way to say it. He's revealed himself to us in this Trinitarian way. And, that's how he's revealed himself to us. In this distinct persons. Jesus has a will. Not as I will. What, you don't have the exact same, aren't you just the same, one and the same? With the same, there's no difference between you at all. No, not my will, your will. Or you're just pretending that there's a difference, right? That's what people want to think. Okay. I mean, that's an interpretation, but you're taking, what I say is I said, sometimes I feel like certain interpretations are sort of disrespectful because it's what you want the Bible to mean, not what he's actually saying. And I don't know, I'm not always the best reader, I gotta admit. I did get a perfect score on my ACT. I'd rather boast of my weaknesses. I failed out of college because I didn't go to class. Okay, not because I just didn't even attempt it. I was too busy doing other things I've described in the past. Obviously, no good. Very little good. Actually, I read my Bible a bit. I started to towards the end, after the Lord showed me. I wasn't interested in becoming a political science. I was a political science major. I'm glad I didn't go there. Hell and destruction are never full. So there is the grave, which is hell, Sheol. Let me confirm that real quick, since I don't want someone to be able to say. It is Sheol, the grave, the underworld, the place to which people descend at death. They like to say underworld for some reason. The underworld is just the place under the ground where the bodies go. I believe death is just what it appears to be. It's this unconscious state of where it's like you aren't being. Except, as long as God knows us, just like the promises of God, like God's promises that I'm going to, that I'm set with him in heavenly places, in Christ. In Christ, I am already set down with him in heavenly places because God's word and promises and salvation are absolutely sure. But it doesn't yet appear. But even so, those that are dead are not dead. They're spoken of as though they're alive because God intends to bring them back to life. And if he brings you back to life, you won't even remember being dead because there's nothing to remember. Just like that period of time before you were born. Do you remember that? Just the same way, you won't remember being dead. Not even a little bit. And in fact, when you die, the next thing you will know is the resurrection. And so you will immediately rise upon death. So yeah, you're not going to sleep in the grave. There's no sleeping process. Tossing and turning in your coffin. Soul sleep sucks, man. I can't, thank God that's not soul sleep. Because that's what people think. It's not soul sleep. It's more than sleep. It's death. That's what they call it, death. I believe in death. I wrote a paper about it on my website. It's on the doctrine page. A lot of you may have already read it. They're never full because they can't be filled. Some things can't be filled. So the heart of man, so also the eyes of man are never satisfied. I realized this a long time ago with my wife. I'm like, I never will be satisfied. That's why we have to continually, maintain that because it's part of life in a certain sense. I learned to be more continent. I'm way more continent than I was when I was young. Like I say, I pity some of the young people as far as if you don't understand how much a young man really enjoys his young wife and wants to spend time with her. And so, I know that's not the area this takes. And so, because it can lead also to hell. But I'm just saying, while you live in the flesh, there are certain outlets for our desires. God gives us food to eat. He gives us water to drink and other beverages that are acceptable for him. He gives us our wives to have pleasure, and your husbands also to pleasure you, But the eyes of man are never satisfied. There's always more. And in some, I guess I can't help look on the bright side of that, because people would say, well, because there's a lot of things you can set your eyes on. Now, this implies for evil, but also there's I like, sometimes I look at weaknesses in terms of, well, how could those be turned for benefit? How could they be good? Like my eyes are never satisfied with, like when I look around my property, I always see something that could be improved. I always see something I could fix or build up. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. Never being satisfied is part of what makes you want to be alive. I want to go do something. I want to go be something. I want to go say something. And I want to go see, or I want to go see someone. I want to go talk. I want to go observe. I want to walk, talk, see, live. I'm not just going to sit here and fold my hands and go, oh, it grieves me the coffee is so far. It's at least 8 inches from my hand. Right? Be lazy. Doesn't it say a sluggard? So, you can turn your passion to good. People have even observed some guys, and this is another way this is passion and lust is misused. Men will turn their lust, their sex drive, into a drive to make money. And they'll pour themselves into their work. Making the money, and they will, their entire life will be consumed with it. Not just with work, but with, because there's one thing with work. I mean, a man can labor 8, 12 hours a day, but he still has life to live. But some men never cease labor. They're always on the job. I get my rest in the Lord. I like to be on the IV trickle theory of rest. So I sort of am similarly minded, but of the things of God. The priests profane the Sabbath because they got to chop wood on it. I thought they should have had that done the day before. I don't know. But they got to do things like kindle fires and, they're working. Whatever. It's their work day, right? So in a sense, they're profaning the Sabbath because they're serving everybody. And so, we labor to enter into the rest of God. It's a labor. It's a work. And so, I get the eyes of men are never satisfied. And that can lead to hell and destruction. But and let's just take this as our final verse, just because I want to go one more verse, because I don't feel quite done, even though we're over time. Whatever, that's fine. Nobody, I ain't got any complaints yet. The studies are a little long. I was promised, if they were short, short and uneventful. That would be disappointing, I would say. As a finding pot, because these are all related, but we can find this tomorrow. That's fine. A good 7 verses. That's okay. I love these Proverbs, especially 18, man. That one hits me right in the gut. Because I literally keep a fig tree. Not that means anything, but at the moment, coincidences make you feel things, even if they're not like grand signs. I felt the power of God. I don't think that fig tree is a big deal, but in the metaphorical sense, if it dies, I ain't gonna go I'm failing the Lord. It's I won't eat the fruit of that fig tree, but I will wait on my master and obtain that honor. That I am sure. As the finding pot for silver, the furnace for gold, so is a man to his praise. Maybe I should leave that for tomorrow. As a finding pot for silver and as the furnace for gold, so is a man to his praise. See, I thought when you hear a man's praise, this is the first thing that occurred to me when I was reading it. When a man is praised, because as I read each of these, as I'm reading the next one, I'm I'm thinking of a meaning. And some of them I'm what does that mean? And that one's yet to come. Or did we already have it? Was it the Bereath? I think it was the Bereath one. No, well, we'll see, whatever. The finding pot, the furnace. What does it do? That's how you purify metals and you determine the purity of them. The finding pot. When you put it in the pot, you melt the metals and you to refine. And when you encounter the man, the man and the myth, so to speak, the reputation and the person, And the person is like that furnace. They put the gold in. Let's see how much gold is really here in this yakety yak we've heard about Charlie. Is he really all he's cut out to be? Is he really as great as I heard him to be? That's another reason why the first verse, he that blesses at the front with a loud voice rising, it should be kind of, that was one of my first thoughts I had actually when I read that, was like, you say, like, let's say instead of a curse, it's instead of a blessing, let's say it's praise. Johnny's the greatest guy ever, like da 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 da. You lay all this, oh, my friends, this boastful stuff about someone. I was thinking about making it like about fighting, but that's violence. Since I know I've had enough talk about violence. I really want to. I love violence too much, So the Lord's called me to mercy and peace. I think I relate it to that. If someone's been overpraised, people are going to hear that and they're going to be like, well, I met him and he's not as impressive as all that, And so, when you don't live up to your reputation, so a reputation, people, having a good reputation is good, but if it hasn't been earned, that's just hype, as we say today, right? People get hyped up about things. I realize, am I still wearing both headphones today? I am. I got both headphones on. That's funny. Did you notice that I had two sets of headphones? I didn't. No, I do this all the time. So I have one ear in one in the other. So we'll break there. I look forward to being back again tomorrow as always. We'll sort out this chapter. We'll definitely read into the next one. We're getting close, huh? There's only, 30 or 31 Proverbs? Or 32? Is it 36? How many are there? 31. I used to have the number of chapters, like Genesis 50, Exodus 44, Leviticus 41. Numbers, I forgot. Deuteronomy 34 or 36. I forget, see? I forget the number of chapters sometimes. If you don't go back to that, I need to go back to Deuteronomy. We'll be doing law again, I think. It'd be interesting to do law, wouldn't it? We'll go through it, the schoolmaster. I think I'm better equipped now to teach the law in light of Christ than I ever was in my life. So I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy that. It could also be tedious. We'll see. Maybe like the Psalms will be something we break and go back to. Maybe we'll get a few Psalms coming up. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Until tomorrow, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
And in that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. And it shall be as when the harvestman gathereth the corn, and reapeth the ears with his arm. And it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Raphaim. Yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it, as the shaking of an olive tree. 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uppermost bough, 4 or 5 in the outmost fruitful branches thereof.
Impression. Now let's go look at some other, let's look at some sources on that, all right? Let's look at some of the language here. Continual dropping on a very rainy day. I don't think I need to explore. I'm sorry I didn't bring you along. For those of you actually watching, try to always describe what we're talking about, right? We're into the Bible Hub. And we have here, whosoever hideth her. I'm not interested in the first part. I know, the brawling, contentious, but we don't need to look at all those words. Hideth her It means to hide or treasure up. Both the word hide is the same words. I have no issue with that. Like hide or treasure up. That's what I'm saying. It's like